He said I was his reason to live, held me like I was fragile gold. But when I cracked, he watched me break without a word. But then, I made sure his silence would be the sound that haunted him forever. He said I was his reason to live, held me like I was fragile gold. But when I cracked, he watched me break without a word. But then, I made sure his silence would be the sound that haunted him forever. You don't forget the first time someone makes you feel safe in your own skin. For me, that person was Ethan. I met him when I was coming out of one of the darkest storms of my life. The kind of storm that doesn't just leave you wet and shivering, but one that rips through the walls of who you are until you're standing in rubble wondering if anything inside you is even salvageable. I had just escaped a toxic relationship that left me more shadow than substance. My ex had taken everything, my confidence, my voice, my ability to look in the mirror without flinching. When Ethan came into my life, it was like a warm blanket thrown over shivering bones. Gentle, soft, healing. He found me sitting alone in a bookstore, hiding in the aisles of poetry, pretending the words on the page could drown out the war inside my head. He sat beside me without asking and said, "Do you always cry when you read Sylvia Plath?" I hadn't realized I was crying. But instead of being embarrassed, I laughed. That was Ethan. Charming without trying. Present without being overbearing. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. Day after day. Night after night. He listened when I needed to scream. He held me when I collapsed mid-sentence. He kissed my scars like they were stories he wanted to memorize. He told me I was the most delicate thing he'd ever touched, and he swore to never let anyone, especially him, break me again. "I don't need you to be perfect," he whispered one night, his fingers laced with mine. "I just need you to know that you're enough, even when you feel like pieces." For months, I let myself believe it. For the first time, I let my guard down. I started writing again. I started breathing without fear. He was my safe place, my morning coffee, my tomb calm. But love, I learned, can sometimes wear a mask. And people who claim to protect your heart sometimes just want to own it, control it, crush it, slowly, while smiling. It started small. He didn't like me talking to other men, not even old classmates. He'd frown when I wore red lipstick. He'd joke about me gaining weight, then backpedal with a kiss. He'd say things like, "You're mine, remember? You don't need anyone else. You have me." And I believed him. Because when someone saves you from drowning, you don't question if they're also the one who pushed you in. But the worst betrayal? It wasn't the jealousy. It wasn't the control. It wasn't even the nights he'd go cold and silent just to punish me. It was what he did when I truly broke, when I cracked open in front of him, desperate and terrified, and he just watched. It was a Tuesday. My therapist had called with difficult news, PTSD, deeper than she initially thought. A long road ahead. I came home shaking, sobbing, clutching my chest like my heart was about to spill out. Ethan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I fell to my knees in front of him, trembling. "I need you," I whispered. "I'm not okay." He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't say a single word. He just stared, like he was bored. Like the girl he once said was his whole world was now just noise. That moment, that silence, it carved something deep into me. Something colder than hate. Something sharper than grief. He didn't have to hit me to shatter me. He just had to look away. And from that day on, I started watching him differently. Tracking his patterns, his lies, his weaknesses. Because love can save, but it can also sharpen the blade. And I had bled enough. In the days that followed, something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to make him see me. Stopped reaching out for hands that had already let go. And instead, I started listening, watching, remembering. I remembered how he once told me, "I've never let anyone get this close before." How he said his past was complicated, that he had trust issues, and how I needed to be patient with his moods. But now that I saw him clearly, I realized he never had moods. He had power trips, emotional manipulation disguised as vulnerability, and a deep hunger to keep me small so he could feel big. He wanted to be my savior, not my equal. He didn't want a healed woman. He wanted a broken one who would always owe him her survival. So I stopped being broken. I started journaling everything. The things he said when he thought I wouldn't remember. The phone calls he took outside. The late nights he excused as work. The names that popped up on his notifications: Sasha, Claire, Amelia. I made copies, screenshots, logged locations, times, words. Because if he was going to let me drown, I was going to pull him under with me and make sure he never surfaced again. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. No, revenge like this, it needs patience. It needs silence. The same kind of silence he used to punish me. Now it was my weapon. I began to play the part he loved: soft, obedient, grateful. I made him breakfast, laughed at his jokes, wore the perfume he liked, and told him how lucky I was to have him. He smiled, complacent, comfortable, blind. That was his first mistake. Because when men like Ethan feel safe, they stop hiding their darkness. And I needed all of it: every shadow, every sin, every filthy truth. So I let him believe he'd won. Meanwhile, I built my world back behind his back. I reconnected with friends he had isolated me from, started therapy in secret, opened a second bank account, started freelancing for side income. Brick by brick, I rebuilt the pieces he thought he destroyed. And every night I kissed him goodnight with a smile, knowing one day he'd wake up and everything he loved about controlling me would be gone. But even that wasn't enough. No, I didn't just want to leave. I wanted him to feel what I felt: helpless, invisible, unheard. So I waited for the right day, the perfect crack in his armor. And that day came in the form of a woman named Marissa. She messaged me on Instagram. "Hey, I'm so sorry if this is out of line, but are you Ethan's girlfriend?" My heart paused, then pounded. I replied, "Yes." "Why?" What followed was a digital avalanche. Screenshots, photos, voice notes of Ethan saying the same things to her he once said to me. "You're the only one who understands me. She doesn't see me the way you do. I'm not happy. I think about you all the time." He had been playing both of us, and probably more. Marissa was kind, humiliated, heartbroken. But I wasn't. I was ready. Ready to make sure Ethan learned the kind of pain that didn't just bruise the body, but haunted the soul. Revenge doesn't begin with screaming. It doesn't begin with breaking dishes or public scenes. It begins in silence, the same silence he used to destroy me. After I spoke with Marissa, I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I thanked her, asked for more proof, and told her I'd be in touch soon. Then I got to work. The Ethan I had loved, the man who whispered that I was everything he ever wanted, was nothing more than a mask. A polished liar. A predator in soft clothes. But what made him dangerous would also make him vulnerable. His ego. His belief that no one could outsmart him. That I was just a fragile thing who would crumble at the first gust of wind. So I became the storm. I gathered every woman I could find, every one of his maybe just a friend contacts. I created a group chat, anonymously at first. To my surprise, 5 women replied, each with stories of their own, each believing they were the one. It made me sick, but it also made me sharper. Together, we built a timeline, overlapping months, even years. Some of them had loaned him money. Others had met his parents. One even thought they were engaged. The man who claimed to protect my heart had used mine like a game board. And now, he was about to learn that every piece he moved was now being moved against him. I gave it 2 weeks. 2 weeks of pretending. 2 weeks of kissing him goodnight. telling him I loved him, watching his face as he scrolled through his phone, completely unaware that the trap had already closed around him. And then, I picked the night, his birthday. I threw him a party, invited his friends, baked his favorite cake, wore the dress he loved. Everyone toasted to him, to the charming, brilliant, faithful Ethan. He drank it all in, and just as he blew out the candles, I stood beside him and handed him the gift wrapped box with a ribbon on top. He smirked. "What's this, babe?" I smiled. "Everything you've ever given me." He opened it. Inside were printed screenshots, photos, messages, a USB drive full of voice notes and videos. The room went silent. I turned to the crowd. "I hope you all enjoyed the cake. I spent hours making it, but I spent months making this." Then I pressed play on the projector I'd set up earlier, and like a movie premiere, the lies rolled across the screen. His face, his voice, his words. To me, to Marissa, to Claire, to Sasha, to Amelia, to Rachel. One by one, they appeared in the montage. One by one, his stories unraveled in front of his friends, his family, and his latest girl, who stood frozen, wine glass trembling in her hand. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was deafening, and I stood in the center of it, breathing deeply, as the man who once stared through my pain now sat surrounded by the wreckage of his own deception. But that wasn't even the end. No, Ethan's punishment had just begun. Because humiliation was only the first phase. The party ended in chaos. Ethan chased after me as guests hurried out, whispering, gasping, some even laughing behind their hands. His friends wouldn't look at him. His parents were stunned silent, their disappointment etched into every wrinkle. He grabbed my arm as I reached the front door. Wait, please. This isn't what it looks like." I stared at him, really stared, at the face I once thought was safety. "It's exactly what it looks like, Ethan. The only difference now is everyone else finally sees it too." I yanked my arm free. He didn't follow me out. And for the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs again. But I wasn't finished. See, Ethan thought public humiliation would break him, that it was the worst thing I could do. But no, the worst thing was what came after. Because when you strip a narcissist of his mask, you don't destroy him by screaming. You destroy him by making sure no one ever listens to him again. I sent the evidence to every person who had ever believed in him. His boss, who saw him as a professional, dependable man. His ex, who had once blamed herself for their breakup, and now knew it wasn't her fault. The mentor who said Ethan would be a great family man someday. I watched his world unravel like threads pulled from an old, rotting sweater. First came the job. A quiet termination. No public statement. Just a single email that said, "Due to a violation of company ethics, your contract is hereby ended." Then came the apartment. His landlord, who had always liked me and who now learned about the other women, decided to side with the truth. Technically, the lease was in my name, and I ended it. I let Ethan wake up to a notice on the door. 30 days. No place. No job. No reputation. Still, I wasn't done. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about reclamation. Of power. Of voice. Of self. I wasn't the woman on the floor anymore. I was the woman standing over the wreckage. Quiet, steady, and finally whole. But Ethan? He spiraled. He started messaging me at all hours, voicemails that ranged from begging to rage. "You were everything to me. I made a mistake. You think you're so clever? I'll tell everyone you lied. I still love you. I'll ruin you if you don't stop this." That last one made me smile. Because he hadn't realized yet. His power was gone. His threats? Just background noise now. And I had made sure of it. Remember that USB drive? I didn't just share it with friends. I uploaded the full file anonymously to a cloud link. Sent it to every girl still on his contact list. Let it leak into forums where women discuss manipulative relationships. Reddit threads. Facebook groups. Truth spreads like wildfire when women are tired of being silenced. Soon, I was getting messages, not just from those he dated, but from girls he almost manipulated. Women who saw his tactics and avoided them because they saw the warnings I gave them. Ethan's name became a cautionary tale. A ghost story told in women's circles. A red flag wrapped in expensive cologne. And still, he didn't get it. Because men like Ethan never do. They think the pain they cause is temporary. They think women are replaceable, disposable. But they forget, when a woman finds her voice, she doesn't just scream. She teaches others how to echo. In the weeks that followed, I didn't block Ethan. I let him message. Let him unravel. Let him feel the weight of every unanswered text. Because when someone plays God with your emotions, deciding when you get love, when you get silence, when you get pain, you learn the value of stillness. So I gave him stillness. I gave him the black hole he used to trap me in. The same black hole where I had screamed into voiceless nights. Now, it was his turn to live there. And he did. At first, it was just texts. Then emails. Then calls from unknown numbers. Then, letters. Handwritten, shaky, filled with lines like, "You don't know what it's like to lose everything. Please, I'm getting help now. Just talk to me. I need you to help me fix this." But here's what Ethan never understood. I was never his savior. He didn't get to set me on fire and then beg me to put him out. He didn't get to tear through my soul and then ask me to help stitch his back together. His healing was not my responsibility. Mine was. And mine had already begun. But healing is strange when it comes after revenge. There were nights when I felt hollow. Not because I missed him, I didn't. But because I had built my world around surviving him. And now that he was gone, the silence felt too wide. What do you do when your entire identity has been built around escaping someone? Who are you once the escape is over? I spent nights walking through the apartment I once shared with him, touching the walls he'd once punched, standing in the kitchen where he'd once kissed me, then blamed me, then ignored me. I'd spent so long being afraid in these rooms. And now, they were mine. Just mine. The quiet that once broke me, now held me. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel lost. One night, I found myself on the bathroom floor, not in pain, but in release. I cried not because I wanted him back. I cried because I had survived something I never thought I'd escape. And survival? That's its own kind of grief. You mourn the version of yourself who didn't make it, who stayed too long, who believed too much, who bent until she nearly snapped. But I didn't snap. I broke. And then I reforged. That night, I took off the necklace he gave me, the one he used to say meant forever. I placed it in a bowl, poured vinegar over it, and watched it tarnish. It was fake, just like him. The next morning, I donated everything he ever bought me. Clothes, jewelry, the books he never read but gave me to look deep. Gone. And in their place, I bought things I loved. Things that didn't remind me of pain. Things that belonged to me. Slowly, I stopped checking for his name in my inbox. Stopped wondering who he was hurting next. Stopped waiting for the final apology he'd never be capable of giving. Because closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from yours. And I was finally writing mine. I didn't hear from Ethan for 2 weeks. No calls. No letters. No desperate text signed with, "Please just one more chance." And for a moment, I thought he'd finally disappeared. But men like Ethan don't disappear quietly. They claw. They grasp. And when they realize they can't get you back, they try to burn everything you've built without them. So when I got the call from a blocked number, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity. It has a strange way of whispering louder than fear. Hello? A long breath. Then, you really think you've won? It was him. His voice, thinner now, rough around the edges. Like he hadn't slept. Like he hadn't stopped pacing in weeks. I didn't respond. I lost my job. My apartment. My effing life because of you. Still, I said nothing. You were always so dramatic. You made everything worse than it was. You never let things go. Ah, there it was. The mask, slipping back on. Because the moment they start blaming you again, you know they haven't changed. You destroyed me, he hissed. And for what? Because I hurt your feelings? That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetically, perfectly predictable. You didn't just hurt my feelings, Ethan, I said softly. You built a life on my pain. And I simply made sure you drowned in it. He hung up. I stood there for a long time, holding the phone like it might catch fire. And then, I smiled. Because that call wasn't a threat. It was a confession. He had nothing left. But here's the twist. I still wasn't done. Because pain teaches you patterns, and I had learned all of his. I knew about the old college friend who owed him favors. The side business he'd been hiding, shady crypto dealings run under a different name. The accounts he thought no one would find. But I did. With the help of one of his former flings, a brilliant cybersecurity analyst, we traced his online footprint, unreported income, tax evasion, bank transfers between fake LLCs, lies hidden behind fake email aliases. It wasn't just emotional destruction anymore. It was criminal. And I had the proof. I packaged it neatly. Every document, every IP log, every fake identity. I didn't even need to add a note. I just sent it straight to the authorities. Let them take it from there. Because the difference between revenge and cruelty is that cruelty wants to see them scream. Revenge just wants to make sure they never touch anyone again. The next week, Ethan was arrested. Fraud, identity tampering, financial crimes. And just like that, his last illusion crumbled. His mugshot appeared in local news articles. The same face that once smiled at me while telling me I was his entire world, now stared hollow-eyed into a camera lens. Hands cuffed, future gone. And I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and let the weight leave my body. He had taken everything from me once. Now I had taken back my power. And he would never take anything from anyone again. The night Ethan's arrest hit the news, my phone blew up. Old friends. Women from the group chat. Even strangers, women I'd never met, who said they had stories too. Some thanked me. Some cried. Some shared things they'd never told anyone. But I didn't respond to most of them. Not because I didn't care, but because I was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that comes after years of being alert, afraid, always bracing for the next emotional explosion. I sat on my balcony that night, watching the world go on, cars humming by, people laughing down the street, and thought, I don't feel like I've won. I felt free. Yes, I felt vindicated. Absolutely. But winning wasn't the right word. Because revenge doesn't give you back the years you lost. It doesn't return the nights you sobbed alone, or the version of yourself that stopped looking in mirrors. It doesn't erase the moments where love felt like punishment, where silence felt like death, where gaslighting made you question your own heartbeat. But it gives you one thing: the power to never be that small again. And that was everything. I started therapy again, not to talk about Ethan, but to talk about me. Who I was before him, who I became during him, and who I now had the power to be without him. I began journaling. Not about the past, but the future. Simple things, like, I want to wake up without checking someone else's mood before mine. I want to laugh without flinching, love without bleeding. I want peace to feel like home, not like something I have to earn. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix someone else. I was just meeting myself again. Some days were quiet. Some days, I missed the intensity, not because I missed him, but because trauma becomes a rhythm. And healing feels like silence after a symphony of chaos. But that silence, that's where you start hearing your own voice again. That's where you begin. One day, months later, I walked past a bookstore window, and it was a book titled Women Who Rise from Ashes. I stopped. I walked in, bought it, took it home, and for the first time in a long time, I cried, not out of pain, but recognition. Because every chapter felt like a mirror. And I realized I wasn't the only one. There were thousands of us. Millions. And maybe my story was just one in a sea of others. But it mattered. Because every time one of us speaks, another woman finds her way out. And that's power. They say time heals all wounds. But time doesn't heal wounds you pretend aren't there. Time only gives you space. What you fill that space with, that's what heals. And I filled mine with truth, with rebuilding, with watching myself bloom from ground that once only knew fire. Ethan was gone, behind bars, behind shame, behind the ruins of the life he built on my suffering. But I didn't check on him, didn't track his sentence, didn't ask mutuals what he was doing. Because now, he was the one in a cage. And I was finally free. But freedom comes with a strange kind of reckoning. Because for years, I thought my story ended with pain. But it didn't. Pain was the middle. Power was the ending. One evening, I walked past a coffee shop we used to go to. For a second, my chest tightened. I almost turned around. But instead, I walked in, ordered my drink, sat at the same table where he once told me, "You're lucky I love you. No one else ever could." And I whispered to the empty chair across from me, I never needed to be lucky. I just needed to survive. Then I smiled, because I had. Weeks later, I received a letter. It had no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Ethan. I held it for a long time. Then, I opened it. Inside was a single line. You ruined my life. I still think about you every day. No apology. No remorse. Just blame. But this time, I laughed. Not out of cruelty. Not out of victory. But because the twist wasn't in the letter. The twist was in the fact that I didn't feel a damn thing. He wanted me to bleed again. To cry. To feel like his words still mattered. But they didn't. Because I had already written the ending. And it didn't say, he wins. It didn't say, I forgave. It didn't even say, I forgot. It said this. He said I was his whole life. Smiled while watching me shatter. That's when I realized I was just the pain in his story. But then, I turned every second of his life into his punishment. And I meant every word. Because he still wakes up thinking of me. Still sees my name as the shadow behind his downfall. Still hears my silence louder than any scream. And that is how I finally healed.